We're talking about three watches that at one point were significantly more expensive than they are. And it begs the question, how did they get where they are now? I don't understand. What is up, Watch Fam? I'm Christian from Theo and Harris.
I'm Anna from Theo and Harris.
And today we're going to be tackling the subject of finding watches, both vintage and modern, that are declining in value. Watches that, for some apparent reasons, but sometimes almost for no reason, are worth a lot less now than they have been in the even very recent past. This brings up a lot of value points, I think. So, first, wristwatch check. What are you wearing, huh?
I am wearing an awesome AP Royal Oak. It's super complicated. It has a power reserve, date, and dual time. I think, what is it, 36 millimeters?
36, 37, yeah. And the condition of the watch is just immaculate.
Yeah, the bracelet is gorgeous. The brushing is amazing.
You love Royal Oaks.
I love Royal Oaks. This size is really great.
I think it's amazing that, modern Royal Oaks, even uncomplicated Royal Oaks, are the same price, if sometimes quite often more expensive than this vintage complicated version, and those prices plummet on secondhand, and this price just keeps going up. So before we get into my wristwatch check, which is for me ever lovable, make a quick announcement here, guys. We're announcing our first TNH event that we are co-hosting with our very dear friends at DENIS FRISON. DENIS FRISON is a man, but it is the name of the company. They are a bespoke menswear brand with great Italian influence. They call themselves like Italian Playboy style. Very, very serious clothing, super passionate. The event is not going to be a sales pitch. They're going to have clothes, we're going to have watches, but really more to just, enjoy and have a glass of wine or 4 glasses of wine and hang out with enthusiasts and kind of cross-contaminate or pollinate with people from different spaces. We have 20 tickets, so that means that 20 lucky members of the TNH Watch Fam can come and join us and have drinks and have a ton of fun and enjoy some incredible watches. We're bringing incredible watches. Tickets are free. To make a reservation down below, you will have to make a $100 deposit that will be immediately refunded when we sign you in at the event. We just have to go, otherwise the money will be donated to charity. But we need to just reserve the people. It's going to be a very small, intimate, kind of private party with plenty of wine and drink and fun. But we want to make sure that the people that sign up do, in fact, come. So that's what's going on. Guys, I'm super stoked. Sign up down below.
Yeah, we're excited to see you there.
Yep. I'm wearing a much humbler watch, my personal Omega Seamaster, a watch that my mom and dad gave me for my 21st birthday. You were actually there.
I was there.
Okay, so let's get into the first watch. I'm gonna introduce my first one. It's a Patek Philippe, which Patek Philippe and decreasing in value you don't really hear in the same sentence very often. But it's really one of my personal favorites. It's certainly in the family of my personal favorite modern reference. It is the 5130. It's a very complicated watch. It is a world time, which is to me one of the most useful complications for a lot of people. If you're jet set, it's extremely useful. I know a lot of professional businessmen that travel very frequently that very regularly use their world time. It's easier to use than the GMT. It's more complicated than the GMT. Of course, it's much more expensive. But what's crazy about this watch, it's Patek Philippe. I believe it measures in at 40 millimeters. It's incredibly complicated. It's cased in precious metals. White gold is what we see most often. It retails just under $50,000. I think at 48 grand. And yet they trade in the high 20s to very low 30s. We're talking about $26,000 to $31,000 depending on the circumstance. That is very low. I mean, compare that value at 28 grand next to, a Patek Philippe Nautilus, which retails at that price point and yet trades in the 40s and 50s.
Right.
It's kind of a crazy value opportunity.
It is.
And again, a significant drop from retail, and really, I've watched them drop even in the secondhand market. Right? They started at 47 retail. They were then in the high 30s and the low 30s, now the high 20s. Incredible value.
Yeah. So what do you think that is?
I think it's a couple of things. Foremost, what jumps out most obviously is it is kind of a dress watch. It has great substance, great presence. It's not like a traditional dainty dress watch. But that said, it's not a Nautilus, it's not a Royal Oak, so it does get less attention. But second, it's just not a watch that gets a lot of play in the blogging world. Bloggers and watch journalists love talking about other watches, but this World Time, not one of them. So if you're in the market for a $30,000 watch, very seriously consider it. You bought another watch. Now, you didn't go modern.
No, we're talking vintage. I'm talking about vintage Heuers, kind of as a whole. They used to get a lot of conversation. They used to be really in the limelight, and now not so much. And you have vintage Carreras and Autavias. They have a really interesting history. They were sort of bred out of this racing community, and that's where they got, a lot of attention. It's not necessarily limited to that, not necessarily that niche, but still they weren't mass market at the time. I think with this growing appreciation of vintage and of classic designs, vintage Heuer did become a major player because they are super classic, they're really cool, really well built, and being part of a racing community gives it another element of a cool factor.
I think that for a little while, people may have thought, or people or influencers like auction houses were at least trying to make Heuer not the next Rolex, meaning it was going to be as famous, but vintage Heuer was going to be the next big thing. And it was for a minute. Vintage Heuer got a ton of press on watch blogs like Odinky. There were communities, still are communities, that were very steadfast behind vintage Heuer. But recently, like you said, it's cool.
I mean, we're seeing Autavia 3646s come to market like $30,000, $40,000 ranges, when not even 2 years ago, we saw the same line, first executions, for like 200,000. I mean, now that, maybe it was inflated then, maybe the 200,000 wasn't like correct market price, but that 150,000 or more drop doesn't seem like a reasonable, market correction.
No, I could see 200 coming down into the 150, 130
even like
range.
100.
I could see that being written off as, it's fluctuation.
Right.
But to drop down from 200 down to 30, that is insane. Yeah. So I think you're right. I don't think that the future of Heuer is where it is now. The future, I think, is higher. I think this is an opportunity, and we don't even deal in Heuer. It's got we've sold like 2 vintage Heuers ever. It's not my business, but it's impossible to ignore how much they've declined in value.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have one more watch to talk about. So we did complicated Patek, we did vintage chronograph. And now let's go modern. Let's talk about the Rolex Submariner Kermit. This was Rolex's 50th anniversary of the Submariner. This was their celebration of that, anniversary. They released this watch. It's not very different than regular Submariners. All it has is a green insert as opposed to a black. Green being Rolex's famous kind of marquee color. When the watches retailed, I believe they were below $5,000. Something tells me they're actually in the fours. In the coming years, they began to climb. They climbed quicker and before other Rolexes of the time, specifically like the GMT Pepsi. Pepsi's started climbing years after the Kermit. Pepsi's only recently started climbing. And yet the Kermit rose past 10. Rose past 12, 13, 14, 15. We were seeing Kermits on Chrono 24 upwards of $16,000 or $17,000 at one point. And now we're seeing them decline down into the 14s, into the 13s, which at that at those numbers, that $3,000 drop is tremendous. That represents a lot of the value. Percentage. And frankly, I don't even think they're selling there. I think the Kermits are maybe worth $10,000 to $12,000. And on the other side of the coin, GMTs, these Pepsi GMTs specifically, while maybe late bloomers, began rising in value in the last year. They rose, from their original retail, the aluminum GMTs, around $4,000 again, up into the 8s and 9s and 12s and 13s. I'm seeing my dad's GMT trade over $13,000 now. Unpolished full set examples. So that is insane. But the Kermit, it's a great watch, interesting watch. I think it's kind of a pretty watch, but it is decreasing in value. But unlike Heuer and unlike the Patek 5130, I can't necessarily say that the Kermit represents such tremendous value still. I think it is a $12,000 watch, and I think in the future maybe it'll rise into the 12s and 13s again. Could even hit 15. That's possible, but tremendous value? I don't think so.
Yeah. Do you think that Pepsi and Kermit will continue to kind of like maybe level out over the years, you know, as we've sort of seen?
I think that Pepsi is on fire. I think that Pepsi will continue to be on fire. They're so beautiful. They're so distinct. There's so much more marketing money behind Pepsi. Pepsi is so much more of a piece of global watch culture than Kermit. So I think the Kermit will ultimately be and always be more important than Pepsi. But that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. We are so in the market every day that it's awesome to every once in a while take a step back and look at it and share our insights with you.
If you liked this video, if you found it informative, if you learned something, please like it and go ahead and subscribe to this channel. And also sign up for the giveaways, because if you're subscribed and you sign up for the giveaways, you could win a free watch. So do that.
Yep.